Hello, this is Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio. In this video I want to show you how I have pulled together a palette of colours and supplies for this little artist book that I made recently. As well as a video for how I made the book, I've also done one video on doing one of the pages inside. I often use a lot of bright colours in my work, although they do tend towards being quite grungy in ways. With this book I felt that I needed something a little bit more muted. There's probably no way that I can get away from using colour because I tend towards it, but I do also like a kind of muted palette at times. There's a couple of bright pages in here, but I'm very struck with that gold on the first page, which was a page that was gifted to me. It wasn't actually something that I made myself. So thinking about this as being an artist book, I do want something consistent throughout the book, and that will likely be in terms of content, which is going towards a kind of nature feel, but also in terms of the colours. So I've pulled out a few supplies and I'm just going to show you how I'm going to pull together my palette. I use some of these supplies quite a lot, so I do tend to know how they're going to react on different papers, although because there's different papers in my journal, they will all be a little bit different in application. So I'm starting with this Derwent Graphite or Graphite paint pan set. So it's like watercolours, but it's graphite with colour. They're quite muted tones, and that's what I like about it, but by the same token you can get a lot of depth in the colours, and I feel that this palette is almost going to be the core of what I want to use in this artist book. I had swatched this previously, and having a swatch card is useful to see how the paints will react when actually put onto paper. So looking at my swatch card, I can tell from this the sort of colours that I might want for my journal. Now, the colours that I pick, it's not going to be the case that I'm only going to use these. I might come back at another point and use more in my journal, but I just want to get this kind of core palette down. So all I'm going to do now is to take a little bit of water, to put it on the pan, and then I'm simply going to swatch it onto a separate card, because what I want to do is to create a card with the palette of supplies and colours that I'm going to use. Now, the first two in this set are actually in a different order to the printed swatch card that came with the set. So this first one is russet, and I think this is going to be a really nice colour for my journal. You'll see here that I'm just adding some more water just to vary the kind of depth of the colour from that kind of deep tone to start with, and then just fading it out a bit. The next one is autumn brown. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed this up a little bit, because obviously swatching does take a bit of time. So I really like to build palettes like this, depending on the work that I'm doing. If it's just normal art journaling that I'm doing, then I just dive in with whatever I want to do on that day. But if I'm doing more of a painting on canvas or anything, then I do like to sometimes anyway build a palette beforehand. So that colour there that I've just put down is Meadow, and finally this last colour I'm listing from this set just now is Ocean Blue. I just wanted to have a blue and a green in it, and sorry, I do also use the graphite grey. I find the grey quite a helpful colour because it can also mix with the others just to mute them even more. So that's the colours I'm using from this set. I know these colours pretty well, so I don't actually need to write their names down, but one of the things you could do is to write names down. Now I've pulled out these three kind of earthy colours from the tubes of watercolour that I've got, but I think I'm only going to swatch one, and that is sepia. This is also one of my kind of favourite colours to use in watercolour or in mixed media because it's quite dark. You know, often I don't want to use an actual black in certain things, but this I can get quite a deep dark tone, but again can use water to bring it out to something that bit lighter. Probably put a little bit too much down on there, but that's okay. Next I'm going to look at these Tombow markers, and I probably haven't used these as much as I should have over the years, but I'm going to start doing that more now. Now Tombows don't have actual colours, colour names, they just come with numbers on them. So what I'm doing here is I'm just flicking through them. You would see me there show you that there's two different ends on these, so quite versatile in that they've got the kind of bullet tip but also more of a kind of brush tip on them. So I'm pulling out some colours that I think will suit the palette that I'm going for. And this is the first one. I'm just going to swatch it. I couldn't find my swatch card of these. But anyway, that's number 991, and as I say, I just feel that this is going to fit in nicely with that sort of palette. 992, and again these will go differently on different papers. 990, and it'll be interesting to see how they react on different papers. I'm also going here for number 912. And again introducing a green, and that's number 126. Now these are water soluble pens, they can be used in different ways. So you'll see here I'm just going to do it similar to the watercolours, the Graphite, and I'm just going to blend them out just a little bit to see how they change. Now sometimes in using these pens it's actually better to put it down onto a piece of slightly waxed paper and pick the colour up from there, because in some papers the colour will just grab it and you can't actually blend it out, but on this piece of watercolour paper that I'm using it has. I'm also going to use these Coloro gold and silver set. I will use whichever one I feel I want to use at the time. You'll see here there's a couple in there that I've used a lot, and others I've barely touched, but I do want to bring some gold into my palette simply because of that first gold page that really kind of called to me. So next I'm looking at some fluid acrylics, nickel azo gold and quinacridone violet. I like fluid acrylics, they're very versatile, they are kind of transparent when applied, but both will give me kind of deep, rich colours. And again, just something that I feel that I need in this palette. So I've watered them out a bit here. And that one, I'm kind of swithering, the violet, I'm kind of swithering about whether I want it or not, but I'm going to include it just now. So I'm now onto the Daler Rowney ink, acrylic ink, and this one is Red Earth. So again, just going to put a little drop into my palette here, and again this is quite a deep colour, so how often I'll use these I'm not sure. This one was raw sienna, sorry, didn't get quite the focus there, but raw sienna. Again, you'll see this is quite an earthy sort of palette that I'm going for. Now I won't necessarily use all of these in my journal, it's just knowing the type of colours that I want. I may use this Pabio dark taupe. This is a kind of craft paint. It's a really nice kind of grey fawn colour, again quite muted, and this is one that I use quite a lot. Now this is a new one. It's a Pastels, it's alizarin crimson, and it's transparent. I just happened to see this in Hobbycraft just a few days before that. I hadn't seen this one before, so I was quite curious. And even since buying it, I've used it quite a bit, used it a lot on the gel plate already. So again, this is quite deep, not entirely dissimilar from the violet. I mean, it is different, but in terms of the overall palette, it's going to give that kind of deep pop of colour. I will use a sepia Derwent graphic pen, and I'll also use one in the black. Again, sometimes I prefer to use something like a sepia if I'm going for a kind of natural palette. I'll also include a white pen, but obviously I'm not going to put that down here. I pulled out some ink tints, but here I'm now looking at the Faber-Castell Pastels, and you'll see as soon as I open the box you can see the ones that I use a lot because they're already well worn. So this is a kind of charcoal colour. Again, I like this rather than the black a lot of the time, and usually I would do a lot of smudging out with my finger. I don't have all the names of this, but again, this is a kind of terracotta type colour. So, you know, those I will definitely use them, but they would need to be sprayed because obviously they rub off quite a lot. So just dabbing up that bit of the sepia watercolour there. So that is the palette I intend to use in that little journal, and you know, I might take stock during the course of the year as I start to fill the pages as to whether or not this palette is working for me. I will put links to the video in which I made the journal, but I'll also put a link to the first page that I did where you'll see me actually using a number of these supplies and colours. So I do hope you enjoyed seeing this, and you know, perhaps it's something that will help you in your art, in your works. So thanks ever so much for watching. Take care. Bye for now.